Our next presenter is Eric, and he's going to talk about the Certification Oversight Report. Eric, and I'll let you talk about OCAP.
Okay, thank you. All right, hello again. I'm drawing a blank. I know OCAP, but I can't think of it at the moment, so somebody could help me. Organizational, I can't remember the others, so it'll come to me as we're going through this, so I will answer the question. Say again? Analysis. I was going to say assessment, analysis process. Thank you, Dale. All right, so we'll real quickly talk certification oversight structure. We'll give you an update on the transition status, the update on our communication concerning the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, and then our future focus, and then I'm going to invite Greg up. We'll talk a little bit about V3 and answer some questions if possible. So we have had an update. We've got a new alternate member representing Europe from the company ITP. That is Ainhoa Ramirez, and that is our only change so far. We have no changes on our sub-teams, so this is what you would have seen last time. So I'll leave this there just for a second so you can take a look at that. All right, so I think everybody is familiar with this page and you know how to find the transition information. But just in case you don't, if you go to the current OASIS homepage, that little red circle, that's the link that you click that gives you everything you need to know about the most recently published information concerning our transition efforts. When you click that link, you're going to see this right-hand side, right? So we've got we've got our supplemental rule 004, which outlines the rules and requirements around transition for each of the participants that are required to transition. We have some top-level changes for the 9104-1. We've got our FAQs that were recently updated and posted this weekend, as well as the OCAP tool, which I think is now at revision 10, even though this is 9. And then you've got our OCAP scheme transition roadmap. So we're going to come back to that roadmap and talk about how we will be making some updates to it. But let's talk about successes first. So the transition is underway, right? So we've started the process. Our certification oversight team, we've completed all activities we plan to do to say that we have transitioned. We have all SMS/RMS committees have completed the transition. We now have 2 ABs that have completed and are approved by their sectors. So we've got ANAB and ANAC. All right, I don't know if you say ANAC. ANAC, okay, thank you, Barbara. And then, like I said before, we've posted the new FAQs and the latest version of the OCAP tool. Now, if you look at the current plan, we're set to end that on January 1st, 2024. And what that means is all audits conducted after that date will be to the new requirements. So we will have to make some adjustments to that. So how the level of adjustment is to be determined as of right now. But I will tell you, here's some challenges and risks that we have today. So first of all, we're waiting on publication of the 9101 standard. So it's ready in the Americas, but it can't be published until it's released in Europe as a PREN 9101 document. As of yesterday, I still was unable to get a date on when that is expected. So if anybody knows that, please share that date, but I still don't think we know. Now, this is important because this ties to a critical path item for us. Our training is tied to the release of those standards. And if we can't get the standards released, then we can't complete the development of the training, which is you can't go conduct audits to the new standard if you've not completed the training. So we've got some work to do there. We have a concern with or a risk related to translations of our standards. So the situation we're in right now, the CBs have raised a concern this week that as you look out across the different languages that will be supported in the standard, the completion of those translations happen in a staggered fashion. Now, previously, we have been able to find a way to move forward by starting with the English version moving forward with the transition and allowing the rest to happen over a period of time. The CBs have expressed concern this week because if you did that today, it would force them to operate under two systems. And there's also a concern because if you take a CB in Europe, for example, that may have, let's just pick a number and say 50% of their auditors are fluent English speakers and the other 50% are not. Our transition rules say that once you transition, you need to start conducting all of your audits to the new requirements. Well, you can't do that, like I said, if your auditors are not deemed competent because they've not had the training. So this also ties into the training situation, and it's a resource issue because even if a CB can transition, now they have to support their entire population of certified organizations with potentially a subset of their auditor resources, right? So what we agreed to do this week out of the certification oversight team is to collect some data, collect some information, get back and review, and then we'll come back with a recommendation. We have not worked through that fully, so I don't know the full impact in terms of transition or if we're going to be able to find a way to proceed like we have in previous transitions. So that is an item being worked. On the 9104-3 side, I know for a fact this is going to change. So I know you all have been tracking this standard along with us for quite some time now. It will go, you know there's a published released version. We needed to make some changes to it. We got feedback from IAQG Legal to make some minor adjustments. Those adjustments are going to go through this new SDO process in the very near future. So the latest estimate I had was potentially doing that in mid to late November. If we do that, obviously publication is in Q1 of next year, and we agreed to have an 18-month implementation period. So if nothing else, that component of transition will be adjusted. The good thing I can say about that is there are no dependencies between the -3 document and the -1 or the -2. So if we're able to find a way to proceed without having a significant impact on the CVs and progress transition without waiting for the translations, it doesn't impact us. We can still go. We have a process in place today where the existing -3, we're bringing in new auditors into our scheme. We're making sure they're qualified. We've got the oversight. So that will continue to work just fine. It doesn't cut the pipeline off, and we don't introduce a risk because we don't have enough auditors by delaying by itself the -3. So that's our key risk. We're trying to work it. We'll get back with you soon with an update. When I look at training, and I need to make an adjustment to this slide, but as we talked about before, there's for the auditors, those that are already authenticated today, they need to take the Delta training. So that training includes the new requirements of the 9101 and the 9104-1. That is already being developed, but because it can't be completed until those standards are released, we're at risk there. So I've written January 2023. That was a mistake. I need to say Q1 for that. And it's all depending on how quickly we can get that ENPR 9101 released. The faster that happens, the faster we can progress with the training and the smaller impact it has on our transition effort. I'm still showing that we're on track for the full AATT for January 2023, but obviously, if you can't get the Delta training done, we may have some challenges there as well. So, and then finally, we're taking a different approach now within the certification oversight team. We have around 200 other party assessors that support our -2 oversight activities. In the past, we have each sector has kind of planned and done their own training. The certification oversight team recently agreed to asking Plexus to develop a standard set of training that we deploy everywhere. It can be online, and we don't necessarily have to have a face-to-face meeting. We'll have an on-demand option, so it should lower our cost of providing the training, provide a higher degree of standardization, and just help us make sure that our oversight assessors are ready for whatever activities we need to support. All right, as far as our action update, this ties into our communication. So you remember back in March of this year, the EC helped us develop some communication that went out concerning the Russia-Ukraine conflict. That impacted a lot of entities, right? So we ended up with our member companies being removed from participation in our activities. You had authenticated auditors. If they resided in the Russian Federation, they should have been withdrawn. The same thing for certified organizations. We had a whole listing of them. They should have been, I'm sorry, I said withdrawn. They should have been suspended. So we initially suspended all these entities. And as y'all know, within our process, suspension lasts 6 months, and when you finish the suspension process, if whatever issue that drove the suspension has not been addressed, then we move immediately into the withdrawal process. So that time came on October 1st. And so the certification oversight team went in and took a look to make sure that that all took place. It basically happened with everything, all the entities, but we did find a challenge this week. There's actually 11 certified organizations that remain in the suspended status that should have been withdrawn. And we actually found one authenticated auditor who's an AEA out of the Russian Federation that was never suspended in the first place as they should have been. So we took actions out of that team to go back to those, the governing bodies and to go address that. So I'm sure we're going to be asking for corrective action and making sure that those things happen right away. And our focus areas. I mean, obviously, we've talked a lot today already. We have a ton of things going on, as Andy said, right? We're in the midst of this change. We've got OASIS v3. We've got SDO process. We've got this transition of all 4 of these standards that you know, primarily impacts our activities, but also has an impact on our certified organizations for those that will move from campus structures back to multi-site. So there's a lot of things going on. It's a multi-year transition, so that's going to be our focus next year, right? So this, we've been working on it for a while, but that's, you know, we're making progress. We got to work out some of these kinks, but that's obviously still our focus area. Now, on the OASIS side, I would like to invite Greg up. Greg, please come on up. I want to have Greg available to answer some questions, but I wanted to start out by saying, you know, first expressing gratitude for Greg and his team for being here this week. You know, Andy went over the activities that we did. We took between 160 and 170 comments, went through each one of them line by line. We're able to give feedback to the relevant interested parties that, and I don't have these numbers exact, but approximately 125 of them, they were already corrected and fixed. So there's still a little bit of maybe verification that we need to do with them, but we were able to demonstrate the work that Greg and his team have been doing to progress our process. We did identify some new issues that we need to work on that, you know, Greg can answer some questions on, but I wanted to point out, we started this back in 2019, or maybe early 2020. Was it 2020? We started in 2020, you know, right when everything's going crazy with COVID. This is a major endeavor to go and update and change this database, which houses all of our information and drives, you know, all of our processes are built around it. We did most of that activity, almost all of it, in fact, remotely, trying to coordinate with people across the globe, trying to get people included and keep everybody informed. Yes, we've had challenges along the way. Yes, there's things we can improve. Yes, there's things we can do better. But to see how far we've come in this environment when it's very difficult to get together face-to-face, Greg and his team have done a fantastic job. So, Greg, I want to thank you for that. And you know, I guess I'll open it up for questions for Greg unless there's any comments you'd like to make, Greg.
A couple quick comments. First of all, to everybody who participated both in the original feedback process and in the meetings we've had this week, thank you very much. We couldn't be where we are without that stuff. To the folks whom I was supposed to meet with this week and was unable to because of these conversations that arose, I want to apologize. I will find a way to get together with you and make up for that. Something you just said was part of what struck me about the meetings we had this week, which is we accomplished in the hours we spent yesterday, for example, probably would have taken hundreds of hours if trying to coordinate that in a, you know, distance environment across all the different sectors and time zones. And I hadn't really thought about what you said until I realized that we'd been doing most of the project in that less efficient way. So we have a pretty good plan on how we're going to proceed. The good news is that, you know, all of the data migration and the last of the decisions associated with that were made. There were some new things that came up during our conversations that we have to address, and we have to figure out the best way to address, and those conversations will be ongoing. But I do really want to thank everybody who was involved with the process we've been up to this point. So if there's questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much, and it was really such a pleasure for me to be able to see you all again face to face, and thank you all.
Thank you.
No, it's not for you, Greg.
Oh, never mind.
Don't ask me about OCAT, please.
That's all right. So just, and actually, since you're the kind of de facto for this question, it has more to do with the IAQG use, or the use of the IAQG logo and the EAQG and AAQG logos and AAPAQG logos. We ran across something recently, which we were not aware of, but Judy on the spot, which is the fact that IAQG now requires agreements to use those logos. So I'm not sure everybody's aware of that. That needs to be communicated.
Yes, so the one you're talking about is, and we do need to look at this. So over the past, I'm going to say 18 months or so, Andy, we've taken some pretty strong initiatives across the IAQG to protect our brand. Historically, our brand has not been protected, which means that anybody could use it, and we're finding that all over the place. So we've now obtained registered trademark for IAQG, the sectors, OASIS, SCMH, and AIM in the Americas. And then additionally, we applied through what they call a Madrid protocol, which allows us to put one application in, and we list all the countries that we also want that protection in. And that protection has gone out. We did a research, and so it's gone out to pretty much every country that either is represented here as the as a member or an activity leader, as well as we looked at it from a certification perspective. And we're just starting to receive these back in. So for example, European have now authored us the protection of our brands. The UK has authored us or allowed us the protection of our brands. So all of this is we're still working through it. Sometimes, for example, I just got a notice saying the Philippines has taken exception to some words that we're using. So they want us to make some adjustments. So all this to say that we're starting to really manage and protect what's going on. And what Dale is alluding to, and we do need to have this discussion, Eric, and there's probably wider teams that we need to have it. Now that we're doing this, we need to make sure that when we release other people to use our brand, and it has the registered trademark on it, that we are giving it in alignment with the rules and how we want it to be. I think currently what I've seen is that it is only just says, yeah, you can use it on certificates, and it's a little bit, I'm not going to say, it's simple language, not legal language is what I would say. So what we're trying to do now is shore all that up, because the first step was getting protection. Second of all is trying to get the right terminology of how people can use our brand appropriately. And Dale recently asked me about it, and I think yours was in particular related to a certificate, right? So I realized that afterwards, that it was in relationship to a certificate. We haven't really gone through that in relation to the certificate yet, but we are starting to, if somebody wants to, for example, use our brand on merchandise. We've actually had people wanting to use our brand on merchandise. We have to have legal terminology to allow that to happen, much like all of your companies have put in place. So I think it is an action. I'm not sure, really, these are new developments that are starting to come up. So I'm not sure which team we need to relook at this with, but there is, within the standards, I believe we need to relook at that.
So 9104-1 says that you can use the logo without restriction per se on the certificates or in any other manner. So I think there needs to be clarity around that particular
Yeah,
statement.
and I think he's absolutely right, and, you know, we're kind of progressing these things as, the first step was trying to get control of our brand and protection against it, and now that we're starting to get that, because all of these things take between 18 and 24 months to work that cycle, now that we're there, we're ready for, you know, progressing that and looking at that from a discussion point and how we make those changes, if that helps. I hope that answered it, Dale. Yep, okay, good.
All right.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Siegfried Brauner from Airbus, and I'm happy to present you the status of the IAQG defense team. And please, in case of question, ask. Interaction is welcome here in the room. And by the way, on the people who are connected on hybrid mode. So I'm happy to present you our projects, our key activities for 2022, how we progress in 2022, and what will come up for 2023. Key projects and activities. In the Asia-Pacific sector, we continue to work on the adoption of the Asia-Pacific 9100 with the Japanese MOD requirement, the DSPZ 9008. We are really on a good way. There are still small things which needs to be aligned, but it's very, very good. In the Korean sector, there was starting activities with the supply chain in order to accept the 9100 series. With NATO, you know, NATO Working Group 2 is one of our main stakeholders in the defense team. We had activities on the maintenance still continuing. I already reported some time ago that the NATO contract agency, the NSP, they flew down the 9110 already in all contracts, but there is still room for improvement, and we always come back on that if there is an opportunity. Then there is a draft study on the disposal. Here we joined the writing team, brought our input in, and try to harmonize the requirements. The same, they are developing guidance materials, how to deal with counterfeit parts, counterfeit material. Here also we joined the groups and brought the IAQG view in. Also important, you know, the AQAP 2210 meanwhile is fully relying on the 9115. NATO is developing a training material for this 2210, and as there is a reliance on the 9150, we decided that we join this group in order to really ensure that the training material which will be developed by the NATO Working Group 2 is in line with what is written in the 9115. There is a link to the quality plans because this will also then enter in the document from NATO for the quality plans. Before I continue, why are we doing this? You have heard about this Gardner study. There is one of the trends in this Gardner study saying in 2025 we will have an increase of the regulatory complexity. And we already started 5-10 years ago in order to engage with our main stakeholders and especially with DCMA, with NATO and so on. I think we are really on a good way there. And I have to thank all the people and all the managers who release their stuff that we are at that stage where we are, because we had a lot of successes in the past for that. So, coming back, projects with DCMA. partnership development with stakeholders to share data, data analysis. You know, DCMA is very, very engaged in data analytics. I'm happy that Eric takes also this ball and goes in this direction, because this is the future. Collect data like Google does, yeah? And then drive results and drive action plan for improvement. So really, DCMA here is going heavily in that direction. Then to identify opportunities for improvement, process improvement, things like that. Assess timelines in order to reduce when we have a major deviation, that we come faster to a conclusion, things like that. Progress in 2022. First, I would like to give you the feedback that I was really flashed on Tuesday when we did our meeting. You remember we changed the setup. Defense team normally was on Monday, space was on Tuesday, and there was a certain kind of interaction. But what we did is we shortened both meetings, and we took a 1-2 hour overlap together, and I can tell you, I'm now more than 10 years here in that, but it was the first time people went to the other room, grabbed chairs, because the room was full. So that means people are engaged. The concept we developed is really good for the team, good for the progress. I'm happy for that, and thanks to the people who joined and took this opportunity. One of the agenda point for this common session, Space and Defense, in the American sector, together with main stakeholder feedback, DCMA, but also NATO, we brought into the 9100 writing team some proposals. We called them improvement proposals. So the right is good, yeah? 2 of them were agreed, 1 partially and 1 failed. Nevertheless, yeah, as we discussed already yesterday, I really encourage the 9100 team. This is a feedback we brought from our customers, from our stakeholders. We ask you, listen. We have to listen to our customers. There is a need, and please, I hope we can continue in order to improve for that. Then also one big part of our work this year was to provide the feedback to the OPC asked by Nino about this Gartner study for the future trends. We presented it yesterday. Again, we had a very, very fruitful discussion on Tuesday, very good engagement, and I think the result was quite good and valuable for the IAQG, which we brought in to that. And this slide, again, I'm coming back on the reduction of regulatory complexity. This slide shows again a success of our work in the engagement with NATO. NATO has a standard like we, called AQUAP 20,000, and it is the NATO policy for their quality management system. We can call it like that. In this standard, in this update of the standard, in the chapter 2.6 quality management system, we are now recognized as a quality management system which NATO can rely on. And this for me is really a big success. We are considered like, when you compare it with the EASA, when you go in the part 21, it is written when a company is 9100 certified, EASA can reduce the amount of auditing on that chapter. And this is underlined by chapter 2.8, where it is written that NATO Working Group 2 recognizes our standard. So happy, it was a long way to go, but again, this is reducing our complexity And reducing complexity is a benefit for the aviation safety and quality of our products. We never have to forget that. 2023. So we continue to join writing teams inside IAQG, outside IAQG with the stakeholder, again, in order to reduce the complexity. We have also decided together with the communication team, we will start to communicate about our successes, because we have to do good things, but we also have to communicate that they will not forget. Then, for sure, we continue like we did in the past to sell the ICOP scheme, to knock on the door of the stakeholders where we are not successful at the moment, but we will continue to do that, what we have done with a lot of stakeholders. And coming back to the Gardner story, we will support the output and the action plan which will be developed. We discussed yesterday for that, and for sure we from the defense team will support this action plan. That's it. Any question? No? Then thank you.
Hello, very good to see everyone. I'm Jeff Ewing from Northrop Grumman. I'm here today as the IAQG Space Forum Chair representing Andre Lacroix, who's regretfully, he sends his regrets, he's not able to attend today. And I will be giving the update on the Space Forum activities. Before I start, I would like to recognize with gratitude Siegfried's mention of the need for additional consideration for the Space Forum and Defense Forum request for a change to maybe a AS9100 light kind of activity. We have a lot of suppliers in Space and Defense Forum who have expressed interest in this, as well as our stakeholders. And I hear it over and over again from them, and it is something that we need to look at. And so I would like to recognize Siegfried for bringing that up today. Okay, a few of the things, key activities that we were working on, and you'll hear some themes throughout this presentation. We have lots of interaction with our stakeholders in the various sectors. We're reaching out to them often, promoting, here's another theme, promoting the value of AS9100 and hoping that our stakeholders will recognize that value in lieu of leveraging additional standards on the space and defense industry. And so as part of that outreach, we have people in the Space Forum who have actively been involved in the AS9018 writing teams and working with DCMA and NASA on, and it continues to move forward. It's good interaction with stakeholders and customers. Our Asia Pacific Space Forum works closely with their space agency, JAXA, and working to integrate the their 9100 standard into their space industry. And then the European Space Forum is working with the European Cooperation for Space Standardization to get adoption and adaptation of AS9100 into that set of standards as well. So very active participation by the various space forums to work with stakeholders. And then the Space Forum was also, in June of this year, we were able to get into the SEMH section 7.17, which gives space applications into the supply chain handbook. The business environment that space operates within, we heard Andy talk earlier about change. The business environment that space operations works in is changing. There's a big shift towards commercialization, and our Asia Pacific Space Forum brought up and has worked on an initiative working with the insurers of spaceflight to see if AS9100 certification will convince or help with premiums and rates for insurance companies that are related to spaceflight. And so this is something, sort of a new stakeholder that was identified and worked with to, again, promote the value of AS9100. There's other initiatives that we're focusing on 22 and 23. Again, interfacing with our stakeholders. We have huge interest in AS9100 revisions and making sure that those nuances that have to do with space get included into the standard. And I think that's all I want to say about that. We did discuss the restaurant on the moon. I don't know if you've heard about that. It's got great food, but not much atmosphere. Okay, so I couldn't be all serious. This is participation from the Space Forum team. We had as Siegfried noted also, we had very good participation, both in person and online. And so some key takeaways from this: we had good participation. We're utilizing our resources as best we can to get the highest impact. If your company is a little sales pitch here, if your company is involved in space and defense products, please contact one of the leaders of the Space Forums. We would like the input and the insight, and we could always use the resources for any help. So any questions for me? Any comments? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Hawthorne with Moog Inc., representing the MRO Relationship Group. Mike Young sends his apologies. He was called back to Washington for a customer issue, so he was unable to stay with us today and give the briefing. So the MRO Strategy Working Group objectives, of course, they've been there forever. We are here to continue the development and the acceptance of the application in 9110. We want to promote it within the civil aviation and defense maintenance sector. We also want to educate businesses and stakeholders on 9110, and we want to act as the IAQG focal point in front for MRO airworthiness and regulatory authorities. Some of our improvements that we wanted to note is that there's been an adoption of EN 9110 by NATO in May of 2019. I think this goes right along with what Siegfried's accomplished in 9100. AAQG, we attend the maintenance management team meetings. These are, the MMT is an organization of authorities. It's the FAA, EASA, Transport Canada, and Brazil, ANAC, another ANAC, but a different ANAC. So we've been working with them trying to get recognition of the standards. They're resilient, they're resistant to it because they have a regulation, but we're going to continue to push with this. The standard information, we're establishing a standard deck of information right now. I know we've tried to do this before, but after the COVID break that we've had, we're trying to move back to that, and we're going to get that standard and let the industry know how the standard works and how ICOP works so that they can get involved. Due to the COVID, industry turndown and restricted travel changes in the working group members, progress has been limited for us. One of the things that we did do this week as the strategy working group and combined 9110 writing team is 26 of the comments that came in from our survey were addressed in 9110. We did complete the review of those. 18 were not considered, 6 were noted, and 2 were actually considered that we'll be looking at as we start the 9110 rewrite. And that will not begin until after we have the initial input from the 9100 team. This is our group. We had rooms right outside the pool, so we thought it would be good to enjoy the summer weather. One thing we wanted to bring to concern to everybody is the U.S. House of Representatives passed a law last week on global aviation maintenance safety. And one of the areas in it has to do with drug and alcohol rules. The FAA believes that they can, not the FAA, the U.S. Congress believes that they can enforce drug and alcohol random testing on companies worldwide in order to have the privilege of holding an FAA certificate. It's a global act. It was called a different safety act before. They've tried to run this through many times. I'm not going to read all the details of that for you, but it's there available for you. Some of the key points that we wanted to cover with it is it's going to require all foreign aircraft repair station MROs to be subject to one unannounced FAA audit per year. We don't understand how that's going to work because the bilaterals do not have that facility in it anymore. EASA does the FAA certifications in the EU, and the FAA does the EASA certifications in the US. So it goes against the bilaterals. They'll figure it out. It requires air carriers to submit monthly reports on who they use for foreign maintenance. It sets forth a minimum set of qualifications to work on U.S. airplanes. It's going to establish, I'm sorry, I can't read that word. Momentum with the FAA certification on new foreign, they're going to prevent, if you don't have it, they're going to prevent you from getting new FAA certificates in foreign countries. It's going to require repair stations with safety-sensitive employees to have pre-employment drug screening. It prohibits carriers from entering new contracts for heavy maintenance facilities located in Category 2 rated countries. So the bill does have to go to the Senate. There's no counterpart bill for that in the Senate right now. And the Senate is adjourned now until November 9th. They won't even see it until after the U.S. elections, and we'll have to see what happens at that point in time. Most likely it will die in committee in the Senate, and then it'll be brought up again in 2 years. So we're focusing on presenting any new future revisions in 9110 to the FAA, EASA, TCCA, CAA, that's supposed to be, which is the UK, and ANAC, which is Brazil. We want to follow up with CASE. CASE is an organization that does the certifications for the airlines. It works very similar to the OASIS system, only it's only internal for the airlines. They do not share that information or make it publicly available. We're going to continue to work with the CMAH to see if there's existing information is available to promote certification beyond the NAA's 145 certificates, access possible development of the MRO 9110 toolkit for structures working group members to use for promoting the benefits of the standard. We want to schedule future MRO committee meetings in accordance with the new IAQG General Assembly and workshops. We expect to see an increase in 9110 certification with the release in 9104, and that will have a lot of anticipated questions that we're going to have to answer too. We still want to continue that relationship with the MMT. It is a direct relationship to the policy makers within those four authorities. And then we want to consider future MRO meetings as open. This meeting this week was inadvertently posted as closed. It should have been an open meeting. We want everybody to participate in 9110 who feels they have a stake in this. So please let us know if you want to be considered on the 9110 or have 9110 representation. And that's all we have. Any questions? Thank you very much.
I'm not seeing it up here. Oh, okay. Oh, great, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. I just wanted to start with a little bit of a story. Who was here over the weekend? A few, okay. You recall that there were like 3 busloads of people that came in? They happened to be from Oklahoma. There was a big football game, the American football, the other football, big football game on Saturday. And they were all from Oklahoma, which is a neighboring state. Big rivalry. And I was coming down the elevator on Sunday, and there was this young man who got on the elevator, and he had this real long face. And I asked him, what? It looks like you've had a rough week. He goes, oh yeah, we got hammered yesterday. It was 49-0. So the score was terrible. And he looks up at me and he says, you know why they call it the Lone Star State? I go, no, why? Because that's the highest rating that they could get. Sorry for those from Texas, yeah. So anyway, I just thought I'd channel my inner Tim Lee, and start with something a little more light. A lot of you, especially around the front table here, are going to see the same slides that you've seen before. So I both apologize for that, but actually I remember one of our previous presidents, Bill Black. And he had something he would say, you're going to see the same thing. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to say, I'm going to share what I'm going to say, and then I'm going to tell you what I said. That way you might remember. So just remember that. So we actually have a requirements which is transitioning to IAQG-1 committee. We're going to have our feet in 2 different camps for a while. Same statement of work. But as you can see here, as it was mentioned by Andy, we had a lot of people. And it was actually quite a lively experience. So we actually, before this SDO, which is Standards Developing Organization, basically our statement of work channeled through the various sectors for different publications. After, we're going to have 1 publication. Now you can imagine the efficiency associated with that. So we actually anticipate our TAC time to improve by at least 6 months for the frequency to market. So our capability of getting those through the publication and balloting processes is going to increase considerably. So that's one of the advantages. Now this isn't a takeaway. This is in addition to. Because if you really look here, this is a chart that you've seen a lot with the 3 globes, the different sectors, leading up to the IAQG Council, General Assembly, which we're here today. Well, we have in addition to that, we have a Standards Council that met for the first time yesterday. They will be managing the development, balloting, and publication of our standards, which we haven't done before. And we have the -1 committee, which is actually where we draw the sectors in to participate in that process that we've had all along with the requirements team. So really, it's just in addition to, we'll have the same reports of the sectors that we've had before, just more participation. Our statement of work, our portfolio that we have for the IAQG remains the same. You can see we have 24 standards here that are either published or in work. We have the IAQG-1 document sponsors. So we have some name changes, but really the statement of work is almost identical. So you can see here the IDR is now going to be called an IDS. So that's International Document Representative, International Document Sponsor. Okay, just a small change. Really the statement of work is almost identical, except we'll actually have a responsibility for translations, which we haven't had to do before. Now, a lot of talk about the SDRs, which is Sector Document Representative. They're not going away. They're actually going to be an SDL, Sector Document Liaison. So they'll still be the same teams, same team members, same statement of work. We still have standards to develop. We have a lot of them in process right now. We don't want to mess anything up. This kind of is the team itself. In red, you can see some of the changes as far as the terminology, but the same players are still involved. We do have an opportunity, 9132. Jonathan Paget is stepping down. He doesn't have the bandwidth. He's very busy. So we have an opportunity for a new IDR or a new IDS for that position. And we also have a new IDR, Corrado with the 9110, who had his first meeting. He stepped up, did a fantastic job, so thank you. Excellent job. And I'll cover a little bit more of those teams that we honored last night and had them come up and receive pins. I'll cover a little bit about what they did in a future slide. So we actually have this IAQG standards register. This is how it's changing. Basically, it's just some terminology changes. Same people, just a different title. Okay, same participation. We're trying to keep it simple. Here you can actually see a lot of the activity that's currently going on. You saw that we had 11 teams last night, 11 teams. Now some of those have already been covered. Paul, you covered 9110 really nicely, and Corrado. 9104 was covered by Eric. But we have other activity going on. I'll be talking more about the 9100, but we had the 9101, which I kind of teased last night. But they've been, of course, they have to align to 9104. So that's actually what their work statement of work was pretty much for this meeting. 9102, comment resolution, where they're working towards ballot. I mean, not ballot, but publication. 9110, they're working their 5-year review. I mentioned that already. 9115, software, both deliverable, non-deliverable. Obviously, they have the 5-year review for 9115. It aligns to 9100 as their baseline. But they're also working on their ballot and where they're at with the 9115-2, which is going to be renumbered. And Inez, are you in the audience? I was wondering what new number they came up with. I heard 9125. 9125. And there's a reason for that. The non-deliverable software is, we thought originally it would be very similar to deliverable software. But it turns out it's really a different animal altogether. So we're actually going to renumber it so there's not that direct association. So that's the reason that's happening. 9120, obviously that's for distributors. Liz has led a team here this week, and that's really on their 5-year review. The 5-year review also with the 9146 with FOD, and then the 9162 self-verification. They've been working through development. So it gives you a little bit of idea of where everybody's at, a lot of activity. And this is the rest of it, I already covered that. So the 9100 series, our 5-year review. See our team. We actually put the new titles in here in red. No changes in the team. We do something unique here because this is a series team. Because we have a baseline that is feeds 9110, 9120, we include them in our team. We have members from OPMT on our team. We have members from Space and Defense on our team. Actually, one of our team members is the head of the European Space Agency, or director, not head. So we have really wide-ranging, level-set participation. So here you can see our checklist, basically. This is our 5-year review, where we currently are at, all the steps that we were taking to make sure that we were ready for a revision and make the decision, do we need a revision? So we found we have ample comments that warrant a revision. So we're going to proceed with the revisions. We're announcing the 9100 revision. We're exiting that 5-year review. We did due diligence. We've been doing it for a year now. We had a survey. We collected stakeholder input from space, defense, regulatory agencies, on and on. And we've established that we have a baseline that we can work to. We're still waiting for ISO 9001 to make a decision. They have already made a decision. They didn't go through with a revision, but they might do an early revision. So we have to see, that's in the springtime. If that's the case, we'll just delay and work in parallel and incorporate what they come up with before we publish. So you can see the dates down here. So we're looking at late 2024 if ISO doesn't go to revision, late 2025 if they do go to a revision. These dates will get more fine-tuned. This is just a rough estimate right now. Okay, a little bit about AIM. The AIM team met this week. You can see here on the website where to find it. We've talked a lot about AIM, the Aerospace Improvement Maturity Model, for those that don't know. It's being socialized across the globe. A lot of companies are picking it up and utilizing it. Robert was nice enough to come in and give a testimonial. My own company is using it. We're deploying it company-wide. I'm going to a forum in a month in Japan to talk to our suppliers about using AIM. So it's starting to get traction. You can see here, this isn't the entire AIM team. I just picked a picture that we had used in the past. But you can see we've had a lot of input from a lot of different companies, both voting members and non-voting members, small companies, large companies. You can see here the trends for usage. We've had a steady increase. It's not a huge spike, but definitely a reasonable amount of usage that we've seen. You see registered users in blue. These are the people that are probably actually doing the assessments themselves. So these would be your various companies doing your assessments. Now this chart is actually quite interesting, and I know it's a little small, but it actually shows the visitors, by country. And what we have found is because of the translation of AIM, Aerospace Improvement Maturity Model, in Chinese, we had a huge spike in Chinese. We just released Italian, so we've had a huge spike in the Italian usage. So we anticipate shortly we'll have Japan. So I also figure timing's going to be perfect for going to Japan and talking to the supplier forum to promote AIM there, because we'll have a Japanese version available. I hope that's 1 month away. So as we get the more user-friendly, our usage will rise, and I think it's going to be very valuable to the industry. Now, the synergy with the Supply Chain Management Handbook, we have been really fortunate to have Mark and his team working with us to identify how AIM aligns to the Supply Chain Management Handbook. Some great work being done there, by the way. And not only that, we're actually going to do it in reverse. In the Supply Chain Management Handbook, they're going to identify where in AIM they can find those particular chapters. So stay tuned on that, because it's really to help the industry improve and mature your quality management system. We started this to answer the question people were asking, I'm not getting the value out of my quality management system. This is to help answer that question. How can you get value? It's not about getting the certificate on the wall and going to sleep. That's when you start the work. This is the same chart, so I didn't have a chance to pull it out, so I'll just go right past that one. So the next revision, we're working on an update, some really good stuff in there. It's not just an enhancement to what we've had before. It doesn't take anything away, it adds to. So some of the, I guess the criteria will be a little bit longer, but it's good information. What I'd like to see in the future is that individual companies can add their own criteria, which I think would be very valuable. Because all of us have our own interests, and we need to be able to add what our criteria are, for those various clauses. And you can see here, we're looking at intermediate version approved, target for completion spring 2023, and of course they'll actually move to, when we do our 9100 revision, we'll also do a revision to AIM and update it. And I also want to point out that we've updated our Plexus AIM training. We've partnered with Plexus on the Aerospace Improvement Maturity Model, and we've actually have some nice improvements there. I think if you haven't went in there and looked at it, it actually enables you to go by module. We'll call them modules instead of clauses, because sometimes they're a collection of clauses. So we call them modules. We can actually look at one individually, and instead of having to go through and scroll through the whole thing. So you can just focus on one area if you want. Very nice. And of course, requirements for 2022 and 23. So really, it's about that transition. That's where a lot of our focus is going to be, making sure that we communicate, people understand what the requirements, how we're transitioning to that -1 committee, how we're going to go about doing that. Several moving pieces, not all within the requirements or the IAQG-1 committee, but it's a matter of coordinating all of those and making sure everything is working. Combine, of course, status and reporting, which is important, establishing that infrastructure, education, training, making sure everybody understands what their roles are, and making sure that all those projects we have out there, and we have 16 projects that are currently in work, aren't disrupted. That those committees, those people, we have over 200 people active right now, volunteers in all these different teams, making sure that's not derailed. And then, of course, phase 2 for AIM, and then, of course, the training. Any questions? So I think after my joke about Texas, my airplane will be on time because they'll be waiting for me to leave. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, just while Mark is coming up here, we did have another question that came through online, and this is kind of a follow-on question from the discussion that we raised regarding the brand and logos and things like that. And specifically, they're asking about how to use it on their website and things like that. And what I'll say is that we're not trying to stop anybody from using, we just want to make sure that we're protecting it. But in this one, it was very specific, so I'll reach back out to you and make sure that you're comfortable with everything that you've got going on your website and the alignment with the IAQG. And again, we're not trying to stop anything, just making sure that we're managing the information together. Okay, Mark.
Good morning, everyone. Mark Doolittle. I just checked my watch and I found out that I now have an hour. Yeah. So this is really great. So I've added 25 new slides. We're going to walk through every single guidance material. I'm going to walk through, and we're going to do a little quiz at the end of this. It's going to be a really amazing thing. So, no, I'm just kidding. It's not going to be any faster. We're going to get to lunch sooner than expected, I think. So SCMH, before I touch base here, I don't mention this a lot. I just kind of assume that everyone knows what this means. By the way, which button do I push here? This big, the big fat green one? The one that looks most obvious? Yes. SCMH, Supply Chain Management Handbook, is a mouthful. It's guidance. It's the guidance material. So you heard Alan talk. You hear me talk. We're both testing, 1, 2. We're both considered part of our products. So how are we our products? So Alan does the standards. Consider that to be like the what, the shalls, the must, the contracted items. The SCMH is the guidance, or the how, if you will. So this is how we work together, and you hear a lot of things referencing each other. I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but that's in general how our world works on the product side. Okay. All right, so let's start out with a little introduction of some of our new people and some new positions that they have here. Gail Luboir, if you could put your hand up here. Okay, she's our new vice leader for the PSCI team. I don't know which one's easier to look at, this tiny one down here or this one over here. Unfortunately, my vision is, I don't have my telephoto contacts in, so I might have to look over at this one. What's that? So we've also got Lou now as a PSCI leader. I'm not sure if he's on the phone or not, but I know he's not in the room. Jennifer Gray, I know she is in the room back there. Yeah, wave your hand, thank you. She's now our leader of the AAQG, and we have Takaki-san. He was here. I don't know if he's still here right now. No, I don't see him. If he is, raise your hand. I don't see him. But he's also joined us as the vice leader of the APAQG. So these are some of the changes that have occurred in the last year. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've done in the last year, and quite frankly, we've had a very, very busy year. SCMH has, if I go back 2-3 years ago and somebody asked me what was our fundamental problem with the SCMH, it was never around the guidance material itself. It was always really good guidance material, but it was the fact that it was simply unknown. So I would walk in with my own company and would talk to quality people, and I would say, have you ever heard of the SCMH? SC what? Who? I have no idea what that even means. So our big problem was the fact that it wasn't the fact that we didn't have great material, was that nobody knew about it. So we've focused a lot in the last year of getting it known, and then with the increase in knowledge of the SCMH also has increased appetite. It's increased appetite for the number of guidance materials we're making and the number of people we have on our team. So what you're seeing now is an increase of what we would normally, would be producing every year. So the guidance material since the last General Assembly, we have 3 new topics, 3 new SCMH topics that have been published, and that's just in 6 months. We used to only run 5 writing teams simultaneously, period. So this is now 3 new since last month, since last General Assembly. Revised, we have 4 revised. This is something else that's happening to us quite a bit now. We have a 5-year revision cycle, so as we get more and more material out there, we're having to obviously revise more and more material, so we're seeing more of our revisions go up. We have 4 revised sections that were done. Some of the ones that are currently under development, nearing completion, we've got design risk analysis, and one that's I think is really important for us now, applying remote technologies. We have the first portion of that done right now. We're working on the second portion. That has been proven to be highly needed. It would have been nice if we could have had it 2 years before COVID hit. COVID certainly brought the importance of this idea, and the idea that, how are we going to handle not just process auditing or QMS auditing, but also product verification remotely. So this team has taken that head on. I think we'll see in the future. This one will go through what I call a promotion cycle. That's what I call our guidance material when they grow up and they actually start to drift into Alan's group. And maybe some of our hows actually start to become some whats. Maybe they actually start to become some standards. Maybe we'll see this in the future. In process right now, a special characteristics definition. This has been probably one of our most active teams we have right now. I think there's 27 members of this right now on this writing team. From individual companies, we have as many as 4 people from a single company. There's a lot of passion about this right now. It was the one that was meeting here this week. It's specifically difficult because it sets the foundation for all of APQP. It sets the foundation for all of SPC, so getting this right is very important for us. It's going to take a little longer than we thought, and there's more passion and debate about it than we thought, but getting this one right is extremely important. Common language, I think, is a really great one too. We actually talked about it yesterday in the OPC. One of the necessities for us to become flexible, to be able to move things and is coming up with this common language that we can all understand. Very important new guidance material that we're creating. Project management, this will be the last one I talk about in this slide, or I will end up taking my hour. Project management itself, the reason this revision has become more important is because what people are starting to realize is that APQP is actually a program management process. It's actually a programmatic process. So in the revision of our project management, we realized that it hit right at the heart of APQP. So we have members on this team now that are more experts in APQP and program management, or that are going to help us revise this to become really the program management section for APQP. So I got a lot of excitement about that. Some of the standard writing teams on the SCMH guidance. So what these are is we kind of take advantage of after these teams are done or nearing completion from Alan's teams. We kind of super glue them all together and say, okay, you don't get to disperse yet. You're all stuck because now there's a guidance material. So you finish the what, but now you have the how. So you can't disperse. Now we need you to go in and update all the guidance material to make sure it's to what you just changed in the standards. So as you can see, we've got a lot of standards writings teams working on the follow-on SCMH guidance. Some of the project launches that we have planned, cybersecurity awareness, we keep hearing this over and over and over again. So we're gonna get a guidance material going on that. Ethics and compliance, this is one we had before COVID that kind of died out a little bit. We're reviving that one again. And SCMH purchasing section. So from the data we got from the performance team, it was really fascinating data, and I'll talk about it a little bit later too. What we found out is our customer base is changing. So when I say customer base, I'm talking the IAQG. I'm not talking about our aerospace industry. Our IAQG customer base is changing. And what has happened with the introduction of APQP, Advanced Product Quality Planning 9145, it's not just a quality document. In fact, it's not even quality it only has 20% of the functions inside if you look at the shells. It's actually a program management function that combines also design engineering, manufacturing engineering. So our users, the information we're getting from Eric and his performance team showed us that our user base is changing. It's changing from quality professionals into design professionals, program management professionals. As a matter of fact, that was number 1 and number 2 in our user base of SCMH material. That's shocking. Quality was number 3. So one of the places that this data showed us was that procurement was extremely low. So if we realize that we're going to be expanding outside of quality professionals, because we all know, all quality folks in here, that to make a quality product, it doesn't just take quality professionals, it takes every profession. If we're gonna expand, continue to fuel this expansion, we got to start hitting the places where the people aren't visiting, which was procurement. And the data showed this, so it was excellent data, by the way. I'm not going to really touch this at all, other than to say that this slide exists. So you can see it. You can see this on the IAQG website. You can see if you want to see how things track through and where all the guidance material are. This is a great document to go, but it was in no way intended of actually being able to read right now. So Alan touched base on this earlier, and this is where I want to really double down on this topic from what Alan had brought it up. If you think about the IAQG as an infrastructure, working together, and how our different streams and how our different business units work together, we're really focusing on that. We're really focusing on bringing this building into one solid construct. And the idea that AIM started attaching or sending people into the SCMH for its appropriate material was very strong. SCMH just released this that now references all the SCMH material up to 9100. Obviously, 9100 was already linked to AIM, okay? So now you can see these bridges are being drawn between this triangle. The last remaining bridge is the SCMH material, which Alan just talked about, bridging back to AIM, okay? If we can get the SCMH material bridging back to AIM, you've got an up and down arrow on every leg of this triangle. And no matter what document you enter from, you are in the triangle. You are in the triangle. If you want guidance, if you want a maturity model, if you want the standard, back to guidance, back to the maturity model, all the way around they reference themselves. And we're trying to do this in kind of a hyperlink environment, which is becoming a little bit confusing for us. But this is certainly a direction for us as we build our structure, our building. I'm trying to avoid the eco word because I know it's becoming more of a buzzword. But anyways, that's what we're trying to build here. Okay, webinars. Just put one quick slide on this. We were weak on webinars for a while. We're really strengthening back on. We've got 3 more webinars coming up between now and the end of the year. So we're gonna end the year on plan, which is great. Webinars, we always get a lot of feedback on them. And I don't know if most people know this, but our webinars usually number in the over 1,000 people in them. And what we can't even tell in these webinars is how many of the sites calling in are groups of people. So when I'm saying over 1,000, I mean 1,000 people have actually dialed in. It could be a room like this. You know, some company could be having a room like this that has 100 people sitting in there. So it's difficult for us to know how many. All we know is there's a lot. There's a lot of people that use these webinars. Okay, so I talked in the beginning real quickly about a weakness we had a few years ago, trying to get this more popular, trying to get people to know it. This 10,000 users has been generated in the last 18 months. So we started out with 0 here when we reset the system and everyone had to register again. We started out with 0. So we got over 10,000 users registered in 18 months. So this is really, really incredible. So we're starting to see an overwhelming amount of people that are starting to discover the SCMH material, and this is part of driving each other into our own systems. You get 9100 ties you to SCMH, AIM ties you to SCMH, we tie back. So I expect these users, once we get this link back to AIM, I expect this user base to start flooding into AIM. Like I said, we just finished the tie back to 9100. We got to finish this tie back to AIM. Okay, we're on track to finish our 5-year review, which is what we didn't think we were going to be able to do that at the beginning of the year, but looks like we have no problem doing it. Launch 5 new projects. We have right now 9 projects running right now. 9 projects. We usually aren't over 5. And part of this new knowledge of the SCMH we're seeing, we used to average around 4 or 5 people on these writing teams. We actually had a discussion on Monday for the first time ever. I've been on the PSCI team for 7 years. We've never talked about how we might have to limit the participants on these teams and how we would do that. It has always been, do we even have enough to even form a team, okay, we got 4, can we put the burden on 4 people? But now we are seeing 30, 40. We are seeing multiple from companies, 4, 5 from one company. And for the first time ever, we've had to have the conversation of, okay, that's an unwieldy team. You know, how is it we are going to start to pare these people down now so we can get a manager? We never had that conversation before. So this is really exciting. Infusing project teams with members outside of quality to feed this APQP element that's bringing in program managers, design engineers. People on these teams now aren't just in the quality department. We have design engineers on these teams, program managers on these teams. We're trying to feed that opening of our market here. Webinar attendance, I already talked about that, and then the cross-reference between AIM and SCMH. Also, what we're trying to do is we're trying to come up with an idea of thanking, giving some recognition to the people who are on our teams and participating in our teams. For a while, and this kind of has gone up and down. For a while, we saw the standards team when they like, I got a plaque from AS 9140, beautiful plaque that says, thank you for being part of the AS 9145 writing team. We've had some things to thank some of our standards teams. We want to focus more on from an SCMH standpoint to give some of this recognition and thank you for the members and the people that are part of our guidance teams, because they spend a heck of a lot of time working on guidance material as well. It doesn't have to follow the same rigorous process that our standards do, but there still is a lot of time that is spent on these project teams. Some of our focus for 2023, again, the recognitions, promoting the guidance, continued webinars, enhancing collaboration with other IAQG teams. Okay, I'm going to say it just once and then that's it. This ecosystem we talk about, enhancing how we feed other organizations, listening to the performance team, working with our auditors, obviously the standards, our product side, our standards and our guidance material work extremely close together. Starting to enhance this, starting to strengthen this so that as one of our legs start to grow in membership and popularity, it can pull the other ones up. It can pull the other ones up, and we end up stair-stepping our way up this industry. And at CMS project teams and KPI review, I don't have much to say about that. But okay, any questions? Okay, I've got 25 more slides. Can you go to the other presentation? All right, thank you.
Okay, good morning everyone again. Thanks for all the presenters this morning and the audience as well for listening intently, and those questions that did come in both online but also in the room. You can see, if I start with the sector reviews quickly as a summary of this morning's meeting, you can see there's been change in every sector in terms of the sector leaders. You can see 2 out of the 3 sectors are back face-to-face again. In the 3rd sector, that happens shortly. So the beginning of next year, they'll start to resume the face-to-face meetings. But in that sector, I suppose one of the things that I reflected on is that they're expanding the influence of the scheme towards India. So we've got a member from India in the room. A lot of the OEMs around the top table place work into India, and so being able to establish, the structure in India, I think, is a very beneficial and valuable proposition. In terms of finance, hopefully you glean from that presentation that we're in a healthy position. We are cautious around the inflationary pressures, so the headwinds that the industry is facing. We don't want to increase our prices and put additional pressure on the industry. But if you look at the end of the year, so Alex put up 4 years out, if you look towards the end of that time frame, our margins start to reduce considerably. So, we'll continue to manage cautiously and carefully through this period of time. There may be some opportunity for some further royalties to come in that make sure that margin position is protected. And obviously, we're probably going to have some other initiatives that want some investment from the IAQG. So we've just got to be careful as we monitor that. But at this point in time, next couple of years look like we've got a very healthy position. It's just those 3 or 4 years out that we need to keep that cautious eye on the inflationary pressure that we're seeing at the moment. With respect to the teams then, you know, if you think about from all the teams, there's an awful lot of work being accomplished. If you look at the performance team, it was pleasing to see the SQCDP model being used to say these are our key data. So, you know, really look forward to that information coming forward, you know, not only to the EC, but to the wider community that we can share that with. If I look at the certification management, there's you know, some pinch points in there with respect to translation, with respect to getting the standard actually released in Europe in one of the cases. It reinforces to me the benefit and the value of the work that we're doing on the single SDO, because we wouldn't face these issues if we've got this process in. So really does reinforce what we need to do with respect to the work that Alan went on to talk about from a requirements and a IAQG committee perspective and the Standards Council. It just reinforces how important it is. If I think about then the project teams in terms of defence space, you can see a real close connection with the customer. You saw it come through in all of the aspects, including MRO as well. Interestingly, in space, that commercialisation position, you know, so they're looking very much not only commercial operators instead of governmental operators, but how do they leverage the commercial market as well? So we need to think about that as we go forward and make sure that we're responsive towards it. The MRO piece on the US legislation, so whilst it may get, you know, wrapped around the axle and not actually become legislation, it does reinforce the piece on the Gartner work to say, actually, we need to be conscious that regulators are starting to operate more independently of each other. So that is a threat, because our industry survives on the ability for regulators to recognise each other, and particularly on this group, to be able to recognise the IAQG procedures. And as we got on to, you know, finally from an SCMH point of view that Mark produced, again, a phenomenal amount of work being undertaken. But I suppose the thing that I would bring out is this expansion of the quality message into other functions and teams, and they're adopting it and they're taking part. So it's really, really important that we continue to exert that influence in those other functions as well. I think we've had a good week. It started a bit, I'll be honest, a little bit difficult in terms of understanding and going through, you know, the various activities that we're on with. It feels like as we've had the discussions, we've got through the week, there's certainly more understanding, definitely more work to do, but heading in the right direction. We've obviously got a number of things as a priority, you know, Oasis V3 development, the transition towards the Standards Council, the single SDO, etc. And we'll get back to you very shortly on those things. But with that, I'd like to thank you for attendance. Judy's just going to give us some final announcements in terms of the last bit, but with that, I'll close the formal proceedings of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so there was another question that came in online regarding the presentations, and the answer is yes, they will be going out very quickly as soon as we can finish up here, and we'll send out links, especially to those that attended online and in the usual participant portal. They'll go on. Here's the date that we have set up for the spring meeting. Pending just a double check of holidays internationally and contractual obligations that we have to make. So you have that. And one of the things that I'd like to say is, you know, we kind of introduced the lanyards and the pins. This time is a little bit of fun, but also a way of, when you meet somebody, you can tell the type of activities that they're on. And so our goal is that you will, when you come back for the April meeting, that you put this lanyard and your pens near your travel bag that you're taking around, and that when you pack for April, that you'll throw this in, and we'll give you a new name tag. But we'd like for you to bring the pens back, and hopefully by then we'll work with the various teams to do some additional recognitions and participation awards as we move forward, and collectibles. We're designing as we speak what the meeting pin will look like, so that will be different every time that you come physically to one of our meetings. With that, we do have some lunch being prepared, and it's a simple lunch, so there's takeaway bags, things like that, because I know some of you will be in a hurry. You're certainly welcome to sit and enjoy the hotel and eat your lunch there, but if you need to take off, then we have that available also. And a message to the EC, we are desperate to make sure that we get a good photo of you guys, since this really is the first meeting of the new executive committee. So before you go to lunch and before you start getting into those deep conversations with everybody here, could we have you go out to the logo, the backdrop logo, and so Susan will take a quick picture, and then you can get on with it. But on behalf of the IAQG, thanks to all the presenters, thanks to everybody that helped make the week successful, and safe travels to everyone. Thank you.